Calls for justice in downtown Louisville tonight. Hundreds of people have gathered and continue to march through the downtown tonight, upset over the deaths of black people at the hands of police across the U.S. They include former EMT Breonna Taylor.
We have live team coverage of the protests and the Taylor case. We start with WDRB's Hayden Restevsky, who is live downtown. Hayden.
Fallon, David, this is a very, very chaotic scene tonight here in downtown Louisville. It started outside of Metro Hall and City Hall, and now protesters have made all the way through the city to Main and 2nd Street. We see more police officers starting to come toward this large group of hundreds of protesters that are now taking over the base of the 2nd Street Bridge. It is getting loud. You can hear police sirens here. Up until this point, the police have been pushing back away from the protesters. This is the first time we have seen police start to approach the protesters. They are in their vehicles. If you look, the protesters have their hands up. They are approaching the police all night long for hours now. These police officers have been staying away. This is the first time they've come close to these protesters who have been chanting, "No justice, no peace, prosecute the police." They are here protesting the shooting death of Breonna Taylor and the arrest of her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker. The charges against Walker have since been dismissed. The investigation into the shooting of Breonna Taylor continues. They are also protesting, of course, the black man who died at the hands of police. You just saw something hurled at police cruisers. Police have yet to get out of the car. All the protesters are heading up towards. They are hurling things at the police cruisers. There is hundreds of people here in downtown Louisville tonight. It is a very tense situation. You can see those protesters starting to push toward police. A lot of people are here. They are angry. They are upset. They are heated. We are now seeing SWAT officers with batons start to back up. The SWAT team has arrived here on scene. We're trying to keep a safe distance. Police and protesters have now started having interaction. They are now pushing back and forth at each other. The police are pushing our crews back as well. This is a very tense, dangerous scene here in downtown Louisville. For hours, this remained peaceful. Everybody was calm, chanting, but now it looks like this is starting to boil over and come to a head with Louisville Metro Police and this group of protesters who are here protesting violence toward black individuals at the hands of police. As I mentioned, it was very, very peaceful for many hours, but certainly not the case anymore. We are going to go ahead and get into a safe position to continue to cover this protest for you. Right now, reporting live in downtown Louisville, Hayden Restevsky, WDRB News.
Hayden, thank you. And as we have been seeing, this is a very active and fluid scene there. So we will be staying with Hayden throughout this newscast as there are more developments in this protest. But tonight, other big developments in the Breonna Taylor case.
WDRB's Chad Mills shows us the brand new 911 call and the promise Mayor Fisher is making tonight.
Help! Oh my God! Yes, help!
What's your name, sir?
Oh, my name is Kenneth Walker.
You said Kenneth?
Help!
It's one of the most heartbreaking things that I've seen in my years as an attorney that I've listened to.
An attorney for the family of Breonna Taylor describes the tearful 911 call, finally released by the city almost 2.5 months after a controversial LMPD raid that ended with an officer injured, a man Kenneth Walker arrested, and 26-year-old EMT Breonna Taylor dead. Even though LMPD has said its trio of officers knocked and announced themselves during the raid, Lonita Baker says this recording shows otherwise.
911 operator Harris, where is your emergency?
I don't know what's happening. Somebody kicked in the door and shot my girlfriend.
Okay, where are you located?
I'm at 3003 Springfield Drive, apartment 4.
3003 Springfield Drive, apartment number 4?
Yes. Oh my God.
Okay, how old is your girlfriend?
She's 26. Bring it.
And through all of that, he still does not know that it's police. You don't hear police saying anything during that 2-minute, almost 3-minute call.
Moments after the call was released, Mayor Greg Fisher promised more transparency during a virtual town hall and fielded questions from angry, fed up commenters.
One of the questions we're getting from the public is, Why haven't the officers been fired, and why haven't they been charged with murder?
There's due process associated with this. There's also contractual rights that the police officers have with the union contract.
Fisher said he's still waiting for local, state, and federal investigators to nail down all the facts as tension, frustration, and the call for change continue to mount.
In the police department, what kind of culture is there? If you see the fruit is bad, you may need to go check the root. And the root is culture.
And that was Chad Mills reporting there. Baker, the attorney for the Taylor family, encourages all who are upset to focus their collective energy on making sure city leaders pass reforms and pick a better police chief.
Our Hayden Rosevsky has been right in the middle of this tonight. Hayden, what's happening?
We are here in downtown Louisville following a very large crowd of protesters who are now interacting with the Louisville Metro Police Department SWAT team. We are at the intersection of Main Street and 3rd Street. This protest has made its way around downtown Louisville this evening. The crowd seemed to be slightly dispersed right now. It seems like the officers are pushing back, and therefore some of the protesters are pushing back. If I just go ahead and walk a little bit closer to my photojournalist, if we walk down this way, you can start to see it almost appears like there is a line of the SWAT starting to line up right now. When they first came, there was some aggression, there was some pushback between the police and the protesters here. They have been protesting for several hours. Many of them were very, very peaceful. They did shut down a downtown intersection, but they were yelling and chanting, and they are doing this in response to the shooting death of Breonna Taylor. You'll remember this woman was shot 8 times by police in her home while they were trying to serve a search warrant. Her boyfriend fired back at police, he says in self-defense, because he thought someone was breaking into the home. Charges against them for the time being have been dismissed. It seems like there's some windows now. There's just a few protesters interacting with the SWAT team, and if we walk down this way, you can start to see that that's where the majority of protesters are right now. There's hundreds of them. They have been chanting no justice, no peace all night long. Just a few moments ago at the top of our 10 o'clock newscast is when police started to interact with them for the first time. It has been hours without that type of interaction. We will, of course, continue to follow this for you as we head back to where the majority of this crowd is at the base of the 2nd Street Bridge in downtown Louisville. Folks, if you don't have to come downtown tonight, I would suggest that you don't. Many roads in the area are blocked off. We will continue to check back with you and give you every live update as things continue to unfold here in downtown Louisville. Hayden Rosevsky, WDRB News.
Hayden, thank you. And if you're just tuning in with us right now, we have been covering these protests in downtown Louisville. They are protesting the death of Breonna Taylor, and we will continue to follow these protests live with Hayden throughout this newscast. We have a live look of downtown Louisville right now as hundreds of protesters have taken to the streets wanting justice for the death of African-American people across the United States.
Several members of the LMPD Special Response Team have been on the scene for quite a while now as well. WDRB's Hayden Rosevsky live from the scene once again. Hayden, how are things looking right now?
We are down here in downtown Louisville outside the KFC Yum Center at the intersection of 2nd and Main, right at the base of the 2nd Street Bridge, where protesters have gathered, hundreds of protesters tonight. Take a look at what is going on behind me tonight. You can see hundreds of protesters. They are holding signs that say, prosecute the police, Black Lives Matter, am I next, hands up, don't shoot. That's just a few that I can see here out here tonight. It's hard to tell from where we're standing. We are trying to keep a safe distance, but there are members of what appears to be the LMPD Special Response Team, and they are face-to-face with these protesters in full gear out here this evening. These protests started outside of Metro Hall and City Hall over at Jefferson and 6th Street downtown. They were out there protesting peacefully, blocking traffic for several hours, and then shortly before 10 o'clock, this group of hundreds of protesters literally took to the streets and started walking, chanting throughout the entire city. They made their way here to the 2nd Street Bridge, where they were met by police for the first time tonight. Around 10 o'clock, there was a brief clash between protesters and police, but that has since calmed down. And now it really is kind of a face-to-face standoff of sorts, with these protesters and police staring at each other just feet away. Everything rather peaceful right now. There are dozens of LMPD officers. They've set up a perimeter around this area. They have them blocked off where it would be hard for anyone to go in any direction other than away from the police right now. We did see things get a little bit heated about a half hour ago, but for the last, I don't know, maybe 10 to 15 minutes, things have been much calmer here. We are hearing chants erupt, hands up, don't shoot, and things like no justice, no peace, prosecute the police. They say they are protesting black people being killed at the hands of police here in Louisville and all across the country. As I mentioned, this has been going on for several hours now, and we have team coverage tonight. We want to head back to where all of this started tonight. WDRB's Travis Ragsdale is there live now. Travis?
Yeah, Hayden, this is 6th and Jefferson behind me where this protest started. It is a peaceful protest for right now. I can tell you there's several hundred people here at the intersection at 6th and Jefferson. Chants of no justice, no peace. Of course, this protest has been going on for several hours now. What I can tell you is that at this point, there are no LMPD officers anywhere in sight here. There are probably 400 to 500 people down here right now. I see some civil rights leaders here, like Bishop Dennis Lyons in the middle there. There are cars that have stopped here because the intersection has been blocked for several hours. The crowd does get excited here when people honk their horns, rev their engines, things like that. There are still, the cars have been blocked here for several hours now. Bishop Dennis Lyons is here, and I can tell you again, the interesting here is that there are no LMPD officers anywhere near this intersection that I can see. I got here about half an hour ago and haven't seen any in this area. And for now, it is, at this point, looks like that's why this side of the protest has remained peaceful out in front of the mayor's office and City Hall here. These protesters are demanding justice for Breonna Taylor, who was shot and killed by LMPD officers back in mid-March when she was at her home. Kenneth Walker, her boyfriend, was initially charged with attempted murder in the case. Those charges were ultimately dropped, but the protest continuing here with no signs of stopping. Looks like a group is moving down Jefferson Street here a little bit, but again, continuing with no signs of stopping at this point. Of course, we'll continue to cover both sides of this protest all throughout the night as it's going on right here on WDRB News.
All right, and you have been watching live coverage right now from Hayden and Travis at two separate locations. Travis at 6th and Jefferson. Hayden was near the 2nd Street Bridge area near the Yum Center. Police are saying to avoid that area, asking the public to avoid being in that area because there are a lot of people gathered. It started with dozens of people earlier this evening, and it has now grown to hundreds of protesters.
That scene at 2nd Street looked like it was going to get pretty ugly about 40 minutes ago when police came up to where the protesters were, but then things just seemed to calm down very quickly. Fortunately, and that's continued to be the scene on 2nd Street, by the way, police are continuing to remind people to avoid the 2nd Street area tonight because there's no getting through there. We're continuing to follow a major protest in downtown Louisville tonight by hundreds of people upset over the deaths of African Americans at the hands of police officers across the country, and those include former EMT in Louisville, Breonna Taylor. We have team coverage tonight, including Travis Ragsdale, who's at the mayor's office, which is where this all began about almost 4 hours ago.
And this started early this evening and has gone into the late hours of the night. We're here at 1046 right now. It started with dozens of people. Now we have hundreds of people in downtown Louisville. Hayden, what are you seeing out there?
We are here in downtown Louisville outside of the KFC Yum Center. I want to show you what's going on behind me here. There is now just a much smaller group of protesters who are still standing face to face with police. It appears that the crowds of hundreds of protesters have now kind of dispersed throughout the city. It's not clear where exactly they were going. We stayed here where the most large LMPD presence is. You can see members of LMPD's special response team out here. They are in full gear. They have batons with them. About 45 minutes ago, at the top of our 10 o'clock newscast, is when things really came to a head between protesters and police. They had been protesting in a different area of downtown Louisville all night long peacefully. They had the roads blocked off, but they were just chanting things like hands up, don't shoot, and no justice, no peace, prosecute the police throughout the evening. Now this is what we see. This is what we have going on in downtown Louisville. You can see the police officers and you can see some of the protesters. There's things that have been said throughout the evening. They are talking. Some people are videotaping. This is much calmer than it's been throughout the rest of the evening here. Like I said, there was hundreds of people here earlier. We're not sure where exactly they have gone to. It appears that they are kind of moving right now. I can hear an LMPD officer giving some commands to some of the people. It appears that some others are walking away. It is safe to say tensions are very high out here. Things are very tense. Now it looks like the protesters are walking away from police entirely. Again, it's unclear where they are going right now, but we're going to go ahead and send things over to WDRB's Travis Mills. He is in another location here in downtown Louisville. Let's find out what he's seeing there.
Yeah, Hayden, we're at 6th and Jefferson right now. We're seeing here actually seem to be escalating a little bit. Chanel Helm, the local leader of the Black Lives Matters movement here in Louisville, just addressed the crowd and said that they were expecting police at this location at 6th and Jefferson here shortly. So what's happened here is protesters have formed a square around the intersection here at 6th and Jefferson, expecting police at some point to come in either direction. But at this point, we haven't seen police at all at this particular location, but it sounds like protesters are expecting them here soon. This has been going on for several hours now at this point, asking for justice for Breonna Taylor as this continues on at 6th and Jefferson, outside of the mayor's office, outside of City Hall. We can also tell you that we've seen LMPD's helicopter circle overhead here in the past couple of minutes several times. This area seems to be getting higher in tension than it was just a couple of minutes ago. We're going to keep an eye on things here. Again, they seem to be expecting the police at this location, and things will certainly escalate from there if LMPD officers do end up at this location. Chants continue. No justice, no peace for Breonna Taylor, who was shot and killed by LMPD officers in her apartment in mid-March. From 6th and Jefferson, Travis Ragsdale, WDRB News.
All right, Travis and Hayden.
We have since moved down about a block. We are at the corner of 3rd Street and Main Street. We excuse us for the profanity here. This is live television, folks. Sorry for that. But you can see that the protesters have kind of moved away, but LMPD is still kind of staying down there. We're not sure what exactly is going on, if this is being kind of peacefully disassembled or what. But again, if we turn around the other way, what's left of what some of the protesters were doing here are now walking the other way. They said that we will be heard one way or another. We're going somewhere else, but we don't want to be killed. That's what one protester just said to me as he was walking by me. So there was just a brief moment of violence around 10 o'clock tonight where there was some aggression between the officers and those protesters, but things calmed down pretty quickly, actually, about 15 minutes later. And it seems like the protesters have kind of just dispersed throughout the city. And we're actually going to go right back over to WDRB's Travis Ragsdale right now. Travis?
Yeah, Hayden, it appears that those protesters who were at 2nd and Main that you said had left your location have now arrived here at 6th and Jefferson. They were just greeted here by a loud round of applause, and the chants continue. Again, it looks like they are preparing for police to show up at this location, but again, have not seen any police at this point here at all. We heard from Chanel Helm, the leader of the Black Lives Matter movement here in Louisville a few minutes ago, who said she wanted things to remain peaceful, told the crowd to remain peaceful, that if police do show up at this location, that they'll need to lock arms together and remain together as long as they can. But Hayden, like you said, it appears that the protesters from your location have now moved a few blocks down outside of the mayor's office here in downtown Louisville. The chants continue, the screaming continues, the calls for justice for Breonna Taylor continue here tonight. Again, no police at all in this location. I've seen a couple circle the block maybe 10, 15 minutes ago, but since then, no police officers, no cars, any law enforcement at all that I can see. But these protesters seem to be welcoming the idea of police coming down here to 6th and Jefferson as things continue to escalate at this location. We'll continue to follow it from here, but right now, again, it seems these protesters are preparing for police to show up here, but so far no sign of LMPD.
All right, thanks, Travis. Travis Ragsdale outside the mayor's office tonight, where all of this started about 4 hours ago. It was just a fairly small crowd at that time and fairly calm, protesting the death of Breonna Taylor and other African Americans at the hands of police across the country. Obviously, nothing like the scene what we've seen in Minneapolis, where they have been protesting the death of George Floyd. But there were some tense moments about 40 minutes ago at 2nd Street, the 2nd Street Bridge, when protesters who were filling the streets there were confronted by police, but that seemed to quickly disperse, and now we've seen where they've all gone.
Yeah, that's where most of the commotion was, at the 2nd Street Bridge, police asking the public to stay away from that area, but most of those protesters have now made their way back to 6th and Jefferson, where the protest originally started when there were only dozens of people. But as we can see in this video right now, there are a lot more than that, probably hundreds, and I'm sure police are probably wanting people to stay out of that area now, near 6th and Jefferson. That's near the courthouse, City Hall, Metro Hall. That's where the protesters are congregating right now. And if you are unfamiliar with why these protests are going on, it comes in the wake of the Breonna Taylor case. These protesters are also protesting the death of George Floyd, that case out of Minneapolis. But the Breonna Taylor case, that happened back in March. Police were serving a warrant at her apartment. They had a warrant. It was signed off from a judge for a no-knock warrant. Police say they knocked. Breonna Taylor's boyfriend started shooting, thinking someone was breaking into their apartment. Police fired back, shooting and killing Taylor. And months later, we now have this scene out here with all these protesters protesting her death.
And this also comes on the same day that police released the 911 tapes of her boyfriend sobbing into the phone after her death, and it was just heartbreaking to listen to the aftermath and how that affected him. And obviously that probably has played into some of the emotions that you see being played out on the streets of Louisville right now. Again, there has been no real violence. There was a bit of a confrontation between the special response team about 11 o'clock tonight at 2nd Street when 3 police officers came right up to where the edge of the protesters were. They blared their sirens, didn't get out of their car right away. There were a number of objects thrown at the police cars. You thought maybe something was going to develop there. It didn't. Fortunately, the next time we saw, they had dispersed and things had calmed down quite a bit.
It was almost like a face-off between the two groups, between the protesters, between police, and then, yes, that is when they started to disperse. And earlier tonight, you know, we haven't seen really a lot of violence, but the biggest thing out of these protests is it's blocking traffic. Luckily, it's late at night, not a lot of traffic on the streets right now, but earlier in this evening, traffic had a hard time getting around that area at 6th and Jefferson. There were a couple buses that were stopped too, a couple TARC buses, and then a mega bus. People were chanting, "Don't let the bus through." They were wanting to get their point across that this is a big deal and they want justice, and they're saying no justice, no peace, don't shoot, hands up. They are really trying to get their point across.
And as we said, the focus right now seems to be right back in front of the mayor's office. That's where Travis Ragsdale has been for about a half an hour now, following what has been happening, and we want to go back right out to him to see what the current situation is. Travis.
Yeah, David, it looks like, again, a few hundred more protesters have just arrived here at 6th and Jefferson. Again, I believe this is more people from down at 2nd and Main Street, where y'all are talking about that brief confrontation with police happening. I would say that things are pushing upwards of 1,000 people here now at 6th and Jefferson. if I had to guess on the crowd size here. The chants continue. The crowd keeps getting larger here. People just streaming in through Jefferson Square Park here out in front of the mayor's office and City Hall. At this point, police are nowhere to be seen at this point. They seem to be avoiding this area at all costs is what it looks like. I haven't seen a police officer or a police car in probably 15 minutes at this point. A couple people getting on top of cars now here at 6th and Jefferson. This is where this all started earlier this evening. Again, this group demanding justice for Breonna Taylor, who was shot and killed inside of her apartment back in mid-March. The crowd here continues to grow. We heard from one of the leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement about 20 minutes ago who said they were expecting police at this location sometime soon. But to this point, we have not seen any LMPD officers. It's interesting to note that we are about just a block down from the police department headquarters, but no protesters have made their way down there to this point. I can hear the LMPD chopper up overhead as it moves down, presumably from 2nd and Main down to this location. You get a few people here that are on top of cars now, but to this point, at this location, this protest has remained peaceful. But again, no police at this location, but seemingly a lot of these protesters who I've spoken to say they are expecting police here at this location. Now a group of people with their arms raised here in the center of the group. As again, the group is hoping for justice for Breonna Taylor, demanding that from police. We've got a couple of people down here that have flipped over a picnic table and a trash can in the street. But again, everything peaceful here at this point. No police at this point either. Again, that's expected to change at some point, you would imagine, and these protesters certainly are expecting it and seemingly welcome the idea of police showing up here as well. Guys?
All right, thanks, Travis Ragsdale in front of the mayor's office tonight. He's part of our team coverage tonight. We also have Chad Mills and Hayden Rostevsky. They have been down at the 2nd Street Bridge area. They are now moving down toward where this whole thing is coming back together, a group of what appears to be thousands of people tonight. And we will follow that as we head into our 11 o'clock news.